Good Monday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good weekend. Browns getting ready for OTAs later this week. Bucky Brooks from NFL's Total Access, what he sees for the Browns this season.
Brett, so here's the thing. When you look at the roster, you would say that the Cleveland Browns are a Super Bowl contender. They have everything that you look for, offensively and defensively, to get it done. The problem is, man, the NFL did them no favors in terms of the teams that they're facing this season. Toughest schedule and a tough division where they're really, really good, but they may not get out of the division with Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati also looking up to par. So if you're Kevin Stefanski, you're trying to figure out how can I get this team up and going? Can we avoid the injury bug? More importantly, can we get our quarterback, Deshaun Watson, to play at the level that we thought he was going to play when we made the big deal? A lot of things have to go right for the Cleveland Browns because on paper, this team should be in contention for a Super Bowl, but the schedule is a daunting one, to say the least.
Let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. Scott, you can say that about the Ravens and the Steelers and the Bengals. Maybe not the Chiefs. AFC North is brutal. Top three toughest schedules based on one-loss percentage. The only one that's not in there is the Bengals, who got beat up and got the fourth-place schedule from that division.
Yeah, I mean, so much of that is that all four teams had winning records last year, right? You beat each other up. Now, yeah, I think you get battle-tested coming out of the AFC North, and if you can win the division and survive, I think that puts you in a good spot for the playoffs. But, I think there is something to be said for having an easier schedule, piling up the wins, and maybe getting a number one or number two seed going to the playoffs. That could be more beneficial. And I know the Ravens did it last year, but I think it's going to be really hard to do again this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. Give me the easy schedule, and we'll worry about it as we go on. I know you're working on an article. OTAs, organized team activities, get rolling. What are some of the things that you'll be looking for as we get? It's this week, next week, the week after. So there's a bunch of organized team activities coming up.
Yeah, I think they have 10 over the next 3 weeks. The media will get to watch one a week. So I always look forward to it. It's the first, when we saw rookie minicamp, so there's some practice, but the veterans are back in town. They have been for a while, some of them at least. So it's the first time we get to see them on the field. So we got to start with injuries, right? It's about how much can Deshaun Watson throw? Does he throw at all? How does he throw? How does it look when he throws? All those things. I don't know if they'll be answered on Wednesday when reporters are out there, but that's the first thing I'm looking for, right? Does he throw individual drills? Does he just kind of go through the motions and not make the throws? Is he on a day-on, day-off schedule? Any of those things. And hopefully we get, better answers, more clear answers. Everything we keep hearing is that he's on or ahead of schedule. So what Watson has said. That's what Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry have said. But it's been about a month since we had a real update. So I think that'll come this week. Sticking with injuries, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson might not practice coming off that hip. How about the tackles? Who's back? Who's not back? But, among Jedrick Wills Jr., DeJuan Jones, Jack Conklin. So those are some of the injuries that jump to mind, right? Jerry Jeudy, it's the first time we're going to see him, assuming he's here. I know he's been at least part of the offseason program. How's he look? How's he fit in this offense, with or without Deshaun Watson? How's he look? So I think in any of the other new guys, right? Jordan Hicks, the linebacker, any of the other new guys. But Jeudy, obviously, is the biggest of those new guys. And then the Ken Dorsey offense, right? How different does it look?
Do you think we'll get at least a taste of that early with how they're lining up and those kind of things, or are you going to have to wait and see?
No, I do think you're going to get a taste of it. I do. Now, there's not a whole lot of offensive versus defense in OTAs. I don't know if there's any. I know at some point you can do a little 7-on-7. But we'll have 11 guys on offense lined up, and they'll do that for a good chunk of practice. So we'll get to see at least what some of those formations look like. I'm expecting more 3 wides. I'm expecting more 4 wides. What I don't know is when they go 4 wides, is it going to be 4 receivers and David Njoku, or would it be 3 wides, David Njoku, and a back? I think those are some of the things they're going to work through. But it's going to be more, wide open implies a whole lot of throwing, and I think there'll be more throwing. So I guess you could say more wide open, but also more spread out. I think you'll see bodies on the offense kind of spread, sideline to sideline.
Yeah, you've alluded to it, and I'm kind of anxious to see how they use David Njoku. I mean, think about splitting him out, and if you want to put a smaller guy on him, he's going to beat him up physically. If you want to put a bigger guy on him, he can probably run by him. There are some things that you can do matchup-wise with David Njoku that I don't think the offense has really taken advantage of the past couple of years, and he had a good year last year.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we started to see some of it toward the end of last year when Joe Flacco was getting him the ball. But yeah, I could certainly see that. And maybe it's just semantics, whether or not he's part of that four wides, right? If you got two on each side, however the formation is, you get a lot of guys that maybe you don't have that inline blocker, right? Which Njoku had to do a bunch toward the end of last year because the Browns had those injuries at tackle. So you needed your tight end to stay in and chip and block, and he did a lot of that. But if your tacklers are healthy, that allows you to play your tight end more in space. And obviously, Njoku, that's something he does really well, is playing space.
So here's the other thing that I'm curious. Are you going to pay attention to the defensive tackle? You've got Siaka Ika, you've got Michael Hall Jr., you have they brought in the veteran, the free agent Quentin Jefferson. So you've got the guys that were playing last year, so Shelby Harris and Maurice Hurst, and now you've got three new guys. I know Jordan Elliott left. I'm curious how that shuffles and shakes out, as well as the offensive tackle.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting who's there, right? Who's healthy. Hurst is coming off. I think it was a torn biceps, right, that he's coming off. So is he ready to go? It's hard to get a great feel for the depth chart this early because of injuries, because guys aren't there. But there's a lot of bodies, right? There's no doubt there's a lot of bodies at D tackle. And whether we find it out this week or not until July, how they cycle those guys through will be really interesting. Who's at number 2 next to Dalvin Tomlinson, right? It's probably Shelby Harris. It could be Mo Hurst. Could it be Iko if you want to go big? Could it be even Hall if he, gets up to speed really quick? I think they have a lot of options there.
All right, this is from ESPN.com. Best team fits for remaining free agents. Edge rusher Yannick Ngakoue, they say the Browns' best fit. Browns have edge depth, but this move would be more about adding a designated pass rusher in Ngakoue. Last season, 4 sacks, 20 pressures, had total career 69 career sacks over his 9 pro seasons. Signing him to a 1-year deal would give Jim Schwartz another rusher to the scheme for true passing situations. I'm not opposed to that, but I think the Browns really liked what they saw from Alex Wright, and I don't know that they want to do anything that would take any snaps away from him.
That was my first thought too, Dave, is, I like the idea of pass rushers, right? You can never have enough. And Ngakoue's had a bunch of sacks. Now, he's only like it mentioned, he's only a pass rush guy. I think you don't want to play him against the run very often. So I would never just say no to something like that, to that position and a guy with that resume. Having said that, you have Myles Garrett. You re-signed Zadarius Smith. You've spent good money on Obo Okoronkwo. And Alex Wright really came on last year. So it feels like your first 4. Then you have Isaiah McGuire, Isaiah Thomas. I think it's Isaiah McGuire, right? Isaiah Thomas coming off the bench, young guys that maybe they think they can take a next step, right? McGuire was a mid-round pick. So I don't see that as a huge need. I kind of feel like Ngakoue would be the perfect guy if you get through your whole offseason program. Go through OTAs, go through minicamp and say, hey, we don't love these young guys. We could use maybe that third or that fourth edge and then go get him. But I just don't see that sense of urgency.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say, this regime, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, have given guys that are draft picks in the 3rd, 4th, they give them every opportunity to develop and earn playing time, and maybe sometimes a little bit too much opportunity. See Anthony Schwartz. So I would expect them to err on the side of letting young guys see exactly what they have in young guys rather than go out and get a free agent. All right, I know you tweeted this out. I'm kind of interested in your thoughts. Browns hiring Commanders personnel executive Chris Polian as a special advisor. Polian, Andrew Berry worked together with the Colts. Polian is from John Carroll University. He also was the GM of the Colts from 2009 to 2011. So they continue to add pretty strong guys in that front office. They are deep, and they always seem to have guys that move on and get other jobs, high-ranking jobs with other organizations.
They do, and I think Polian is available because there's a shakeup going on with the Commanders, right, organizationally, but especially lately in the personnel department. It's a good stopping spot for him. The connection with Andrew Berry, you're right. And it makes sense to bring in guys you have relationships with, to bring in guys who are former GMs, right? They have experience that can be critical. We've seen it done before. We saw John Dorsey do it with guys. We've seen Andrew Berry do it with I'm blanking on the former Colts GM was here for a while, and now he moved on.
Grigson,
big guy with
Ryan Grigson.
Yeah, Ryan Grigson. Thank you. So they've done this before, and they lose Kwesi Udofo-Mensah to the Vikings, but they could lose Glenn Cook, they could lose Captain Raish. They're GM candidates that have interviewed for jobs in the past, so it's always good to have as much talent there as possible.
Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. And I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. We head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can also check out his work, BrownsZone.com, on the internet. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I think with Stefanski, with the possibility of him becoming the CEO instead of him calling plays, I think it will work out. I think it gives him a lot more leeway to go to special teams, go to defense, and not just be all in on offense. I know he has some say with the offense and how it's going to look like and how it should look like, and still have the same continuity of what, the identity of the offense is, but to give it, the responsibilities to Ken Dorsey. And I think even some of the things that we can try to carry over from what Kevin ran, I think as far as like the alignment perspective, I think we're going to be good. We're going to be good. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, here's where I'm at with play calling. If Kevin Stefanski thinks it gives him a better chance to call the plays and he wants to call them, great. If he thinks Ken Dorsey does, great. It's a guy that brought – I mean, here's the thing. He kind of deserves the benefit of the doubt. Brings in Mike Vrabel, isn't threatened by it. What does the guy have to do to get the benefit of the doubt here? So that's kind of where I'm at with play calling and Kevin Stefanski right now.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, David. The couple things that stick out to me is I thought he did a great job last year as a play caller. I think he's done a fine job throughout his tenure as a play caller. But I thought, especially last year, doing what he did, doing what the team did without – with the merry-go-round of quarterbacks, I thought it was phenomenal, and I think Stefanski deserves a ton of credit for that. The other point is people make so much of he can spend more time with special teams, more time with defense. I haven't thought – I don't think that's been an issue since Stefanski's been here. Like, I don't have these examples of, oh, my gosh, they were caught off guard by a fake punt, or, they didn't know when to take a timeout on defense. He's standing on the sideline. It's not like he's sitting on the bench with the offense. They have an offensive coordinator who's in charge of that. So I just don't think that, to me, that's not a convincing enough argument. I understand it, and I think with some other coaches that could be a problem. But Jim Schwartz is autonomous to a certain degree, and so is Bubba Ventrone. So that would not be the reason I gave up play calling if I were Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, he hires guys and lets them do their job. That's what he did with Bubba Ventrone. That's what he did with Jim Schwartz. So, again, I'm with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is interesting. This is NFL's best cornerbacks in press coverage from 2023. This from PFF. So take a look. Trey Brown, Seahawks is tops 88.5. Jamel Dean, 82.5 is second. Yiadem from the Saints, 81.7. Charvarius Ward from the 49ers is fifth. Stephen Gilmore from the Cowboys, sixth. Greg Newsome of the Browns is sixth in the PFF ranking in press coverage, 75.8 grade across 148 such reps. Newsome was targeted, 18.2% clip, allowed just 149 yards in coverage. So that's when Andrew Berry says he's not in a hurry to give up a guy who's really good at tight press coverage, that's what he means. And I still think they're going to try to find a way to keep all three of those corners because tight press coverage allows Jim Schwartz's defense to be as good as it can be.
It's really hard to play press man in this league. It just is. And if you got him, you don't give him away, as Andrew Berry said. And if you got him, I think you should cherish him. And, I know Newsome hasn't been perfect, and I get it. And I get, I understand where some of the fans' frustration comes from. Giving up some plays. He had a rough game in Denver. He celebrates and dances, and some fans have a hard time with that. That's him. That's his personality. That's what Schwartz wants from his defensive guys. He talks about that all the time. But those numbers, they're impressive. And, I think it's probably hard to play press man out of the slot. So a lot of that's probably on the outside. And we've talked about it, Dave, that his versatility, the ability for him to play outside and move inside is something it's really rare in this league. I'm not sure there's 10 guys in the league that do it. And there certainly are 10 guys that do it to the level that Newsome does.
I have no issue with him celebrating because when he gets beat, the other guy's celebrating like crazy. So celebrate when you do something well because it isn't easy to do. All right, this one I got some questions about. NFL linebacker rankings from Pro Football Network. They go Fred Warner, number 1, Roquan Smith of the Ravens, number 2. I don't argue with that. Matt Milano from the Bills, they rank number 3. He's coming off a broken leg. They have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah ranked 14th. While his stature, 6'2", 221, might get him pigeonholed as coverage-only linebacker, he improved as a run defender and pass rusher in 2023. His 20 TFLs ranked first among linebackers, as did his 12.9% run-stop rate. Also set a career high with 3.5 sacks while making his first Pro Bowl. I'm not sure how you come out with 14 when he had – the leading TFLs, 20 TFLs, and you're ranking him 14th. Something doesn't add up there. If you want to say you want to see it again, okay.
Yeah, I mean, not that the Pro Bowl's the end-all be-all, but 14 linebackers didn't make the Pro Bowl, and he did, and he deserved it. It was a breakout year for JOK, and it was in multiple areas. It was as a blitzer. It was against the run. It was in coverage. I think he got better, and the linebacker coach Jason Tarver talked about this multiple times. Got better making adjustments inside games. Got better shaking off bad plays, and that was kind of a mid-season thing. He had an issue about week 6, and they took him off the field for a while, and then he was able to figure that out as the season went on and played better and better. It wasn't perfect in a playoff game, but he was a guy flying around on that defense in the playoff game when they were getting boat raced. So I would certainly have him higher than 14.
Yeah, and I'm with you. The playoff game, I thought he showed up. I thought he was one of a few defenders who showed up in that. All right, this from Marcus Mosher, 33rd team, predicting the 2024 AFC North. Ravens 10-7, Bengals 10-7, Steelers 10-7. Browns 9-8. All teams but the Browns make the playoffs. Scott, I can't necessarily argue with that. I think they're going to be better than 9 wins, but it is a brutal schedule, and you're going to have to. The teams in the AFC North are going to cannibalize each other again, just like they did last year.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what it feels like, and Baltimore had, I think they went 13-4 last year. So they were able to separate themselves, right? But they've had losses, and I think they've had the most significant losses inside the division. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh's gotten better. Cincinnati gets Joe Burrow back, right? the Browns are standing pat and should have Deshaun Watson back. So I think it's going to tighten up. The Ravens have the tougher schedule. The Browns' strength of schedule is tougher, but the Ravens have those first-place teams that they play. 10-7, 10-7, 10-7, 9-8. If it ended like that, just imagine what that last month, those last 3 weeks, 2 weeks would be like. The Browns finish in Baltimore. So, I can't argue with the general consensus of that. That probably wouldn't be my prediction right now. But I'll say this, if he's got the Browns 9-8 and they got a chance to make the playoffs with the win or 2 wins in the last couple of weeks, that's pretty good in this division.
Yeah, and it's going to be like that because all of these teams just seem to be getting – you mentioned the losses that the Ravens had, but when you have the quarterbacks that are in this division, in Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, they erase some of the blemishes that are on those rosters without question. Scott Petrick and I are going to take a quick time out. Other side of the break. Top 30 players over 30 years old. There's several on the Browns. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can also find his work, brownzone.com, on the internet. This from PFF. Top 30 players in the NFL over 30 years of age. Number 1, they go Trent Williams, offensive tackle from the 49ers. Number 2, Tyreek Hill, wide receiver from the Dolphins. Number 3, Chris Jones, defensive tackle from the Chiefs. Checking in at 19, edge rusher Zadarius Smith for the Browns. Smith posted a PFF pass rush grade north of 84.2 in each of his past 4 seasons. Despite totaling just 7 sacks in 2023, Smith logged 63 pressures and produced a 17.9% pass rush win rate. 28, Joel Bitonio has been one of the best guards in the NFL for nearly a decade. 2023, first time we saw a decline in his game, 67.9 overall grade, coming off 3 years of grades north of 87.6 and a dominant 94.1 in 2021. Was banged up a little bit more, too, last year. And Amari Cooper is 29th. Cooper isn't the type of dominant game after game, but will consistently get open, churn out yards and first downs. 84.3 two-year PFF grade still show he plays at a consistently high level. Scott, let's start with Cooper. I think Cooper is overlooked, doesn't have blazing speed. The Browns didn't throw a boatload, so he didn't, he did have the 200 and whatever yard game. He just gets open. If you watch him week in and week out, you need to do that to appreciate how good Amari Cooper is.
No, there's no doubt. And I think he's still a top, 15, 20 receiver in this league. I have not seen him slow down very much. He's been, nicked up with injuries at the end of the last 2 seasons that he's played through or tried to play through. I really like him. I think he's incredibly valuable. I think he's going to continue to be good. Now, we could have the argument whether or not the Browns should pay him moving forward. He's entering the last year. I get that with a receiver his age. But I think he's been a great influence on this team. Still incredibly productive, despite, not having one quarterback really to just sit there and throw him the ball the last 2 years. And maybe he'll benefit from the spread, from the spread out offense, from having Jerry Jeudy, I'm certain he would benefit from having Deshaun Watson for a full season.
The other one, Joel Bitonio, that they mentioned in decline, he was just kind of beat up a lot of last year. And he just goes out and plays most of the games.
Yeah, I thought both those guys are too low on this list. I would have had them both ahead of Zadarius. Bitonio, yeah, it was a rough year for him, but he was dealing with a whole bunch of injuries, and it didn't stop. He got hurt again in the playoff game. So, to me, it's way too early to talk about a decline for Joe Bitonio. Maybe it's coming. I get it. The age is a factor. But he was excellent the year before when he was pretty healthy. If he can stay healthy and get back to being able to play 17 games a year and being himself for 17 games, that'll be huge. I mean, he had knee surgery during the season. His back was bugging him. I think he had an ankle injury. So it's all about his health, because when he's healthy, he's about as good as it is in that position. And it has been for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, he's kind of on the fringe of that Hall of Fame type, and it's hard to get in the Hall of Fame as a guard. But I think he puts together 2 years, and he's probably in. If he puts together 2 typical Joel Bitonio consistent years, he's going to be in that conversation coming down as a Hall of Famer. Zadarius Smith, you can nitpick a lot. All I know is when you put him on the defensive line with Myles Garrett became the defensive player of the year everybody was hoping and expecting him to be. That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's a really good player. He's a really good player, and enough for the Browns to make it a priority to re-sign him. It feels like he fit in here. Wanted to come back, obviously. I think he's really solid, has been for a long time in this league. Wanted to get back to playing end in a 4-3. He played a lot of 3-4, edge guy. He wanted to play in a 4-3. I think he really enjoyed that. And you're right. And it's tough to say he had that impact, right? That he made Myles Garrett Defensive Player of the Year. But he's certainly one of those factors, and I don't think that should be downplayed at all.
All right, so this also from PFF. Most underrated player on every NFL team. For the Browns, they say Maurice Hurst. Although his season was cut short due to injury, he was playing best football of his career in his 6th NFL campaign in 2023. And in fact, first 8 weeks of the season, Hurst ranked 7th in interior defenders in PFF overall grade, 87.9. Yeah, he was a guy that, you hope he comes back and plays like he did last year before he got hurt, because he was playing really well.
He was, and he's a guy that the Browns took a flyer on because he'd been hurt, right? I liked him coming out of college. I did. He was one of those guys that was on my radar, and he fell off. I think there was a medical questions when he came out, and then he's been hurt a bunch. When he's healthy, he makes an impact. He's the perfect fit for Jim Schwartz's scheme, trying to get upfield from the interior. He belongs on that list of the Browns, underrated guys. Ethan Posick popped into my head. I think he's really valuable at center. They got so many big names and big contracts that it's almost tough to be underrated on this roster.
All right, before we go to break, this is from the 33rd team. They tweet this out. Pick one of these defenses. You see, it's the Ravens, it's the Browns, and it's the Chiefs. So you've got Hamilton, Smith, Matabuke, Humphrey, Williams, Wiggins, Garrett, Smith, Emerson, Jr., Ward, Delpit, Owusu Koromoa, Jones, Karloftis, Tranquil, Bolton, McDuffie, Reed. I'm going with either the Browns or the Ravens. The Chiefs, they're good, but I think the other two are a little bit better. Who are you picking out of those?
I tell you what, Myles, in my opinion, Myles Garrett's the best player, so that gives the Browns the edge there. I got questions about Baltimore's secondary, right? They got young corners.
Yep.
They're kind of, redoing it there. Wiggins is a rookie. Kansas City won the Super Bowl. I like their secondary a lot. It's hard. I think that's really hard. Kyle Hamilton's fantastic. Roquan Smith's fantastic. They figure out a way to generate pass rush, even though, Matabuke had a ton last year. I don't know. I don't know if you can go wrong, and I got a hard time just picking one. Of those 6, I think I like the Browns, but I feel like the Ravens might be deeper overall.
Yeah, that's fair. You got, the top 3 or 4 there with the Ravens are pretty tough, and then it drops off a little bit. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, they will talk some creative ways to create salary cap measures for the Browns. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. So this is from the Bleacher Report. Most creative ways each and every NFL team can create more cap space after the 2024 draft. Browns currently $13 million in cap space. Upcoming contract extensions for Amari Cooper, Jedrick Wills, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Ways to create cap space. Extend Amari Cooper. I think they want to extend Amari Cooper, Scott. I don't think it's to create cap space. Trade Greg Newsome. Don't think that's happening. Restructure Deshaun Watson's contract. That may happen, and it's pretty easy. They don't need to get creative to create cap space. The only way they're trading Greg Newsome is if they get something they think is valuable in return.
Yeah, and that they wouldn't be saving much space with Newsome this year anyway. He's only making 2.5, I think, or 2.4 million. It would be about 2025 when it jumps to 13.4. They're good at figuring out a way to do it, right? Last year they extended a bunch of guys in June, and they could try to do that again. They're running out of guys to do it. They don't have a ton of guys that you can just extend with those big numbers because they've already done it. Watson is still an option, and it was an option in March before free agency. They didn't need to use it. It remains that option now. His cap number's north of 60 already, but they could play around with it, and they have ways to do it. They could do it with Cooper. But, I think you got to be careful with pushing too many contracts, 5 years from now.
Well, the one thing is they've managed it real well. Everybody was woe is me when they signed Deshaun Watson to that contract. There isn't a move that it really hasn't hampered them from making moves that they wanted to make. So I'm with you. They know where to go and how to get as much money as they need. This from the Bleacher Report. Best player who could be cut from every NFL roster this offseason. Browns, they say David Bell has totaled 900 snaps in offense special teams during his 2 professional seasons. Maybe squeezed out of the position after the Browns traded for Judy, drafted Jamari Thrash. Seems unlikely Bell and Cedric Tillman will remain on the roster. There's truth to what they're saying. The other thing is, think about how much of a chance the Browns gave Anthony Schwartz, who's third-round pick, just like David Bell. David Bell has been productive in spots. I just don't know. I think his physical skills limit his upside. High floor, low ceiling.
Yeah, there's no doubt. The reason Schwartz got a ton of chances is because he ran a 4.2.
Right.
Bell does not have a characteristic that jumps off the page. Maybe his hands, right, which obviously important for receiver, but it's not size, it's not speed, which makes it difficult. I thought he was going to have a hard time making the roster last year. He stuck around, had a couple of big plays. The best he can be this year, assuming everybody's healthy, is 5th, right? They got Cooper and Judy and Moore and Tillman. To me, that's their solid top 4. And then it's Bell, Michael Woods the second, Jamari Thrash, the rookie, competing for spots, playing time. James Prochet is back there as a possible returner receiver. So it'll be interesting. I wouldn't write Bell off, but he's going to have to beat out some guys to make this roster.
All right, this from Dog Pound Daily. 3 Browns preparing for their final season in Cleveland. 3, they go with Dustin Hopkins, set for free agency in 2025. Cleveland will likely look at a younger option, especially if he suffers any more injuries this year. 2, Jedrick Wills, unless he figures it out, becomes a consistent force at left tackle. He's going to be looking for a new home in 2025. And number 1, Elijah Moore. First season with the team wasn't bad at 640 yards, 2 touchdowns, 59 receptions. Also wasn't much of a difference maker and didn't stretch the field, averaged 10.8 yards per reception. You know what? I don't know that they're going to – I don't know that I agree any of those 3 are done. If Hopkins makes his field goals, he's going to be here for as long as he continues to make his field goals. Jedrick Wills, they don't have a better option right now. I think the Browns – front office likes Jedrick Wills much more than the fan base. And Elijah Moore, he might have been the guy that suffered the most from having 4 different quarterbacks playing quarterback last year.
Yeah, that's interesting about Moore. I think you're right. Yeah, it's so hard to tell, right? He's only been here a year. I understand where they're coming from. Like, I could see this being his final year. You probably, I don't know, can you pay him, Judy, and Cooper? I don't know, maybe. If you re-sign Cooper, I think that's probably bad sign for Elijah Moore sticking around. When they traded for him, I think they envisioned a long-term future. But the fact that they traded for Judy, it probably is less that they think Moore is going to be their number 1 or number 2 guy, like they might have thought when they traded for him. So I could see him, it depends, right? But I could see this being his final year. Hopkins, right. If he's great and stays healthy, there'll be no need to run him out of town. You got to hang out of that kicker as long as you can. But he is getting older, has had injury issues. And then Wills, to me, Wills is the one on that page that I disagree with the most. Like you said, there's not a successor on the roster, unless you wanted to make the DeJuan Jones move, and then you probably have an opening at right tackle. And I think I like Wills more than a lot of people do. I think he could have a future here, and I don't think the Browns want to just give up on a guy they drafted number 10.
The other thing is, it's going to be interesting to see how a new offensive line coach, how he responds to – and again, I'm not saying anything even remotely that Andy Dickerson is better than Bill Callahan. Different coaches reach different players. It's just a fact. And Bill Callahan, I've said it a number of times, I think he's the best offensive line coach in the NFL. But – maybe a different voice helps Jedrick Wills.
Yeah, that's not crazy. I think Wills might have a different personality than the average offensive lineman. Maybe Dickerson has less tough love than Callahan, and Wills will respond to that. Maybe just gets older and more mature and figures out what it takes in this league. I think he's gotten better. I think he was getting better last year until the injury. So obviously he's not perfect. He hasn't lived up to the number 10 pick in the draft. I just think it's hard to find left tackles, and I know that he is a starting caliber left tackle in this league. So, yeah, maybe he can find one cheaper. Maybe he could play as well, but I don't think there's any guarantee of that.
So before I let you go, let me get your thoughts on this. We've already said we expect this offense to be different. It's going to be a little more open. Are you going to be asking your offensive linemen to do some things differently? And are different skill sets going to come into play?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Maybe you're one-on-one more often, right? If you really spread it out. Maybe it takes pressure off your offensive lineman. The ball's coming out quicker. But, Deshaun Watson, he tends to hold on to the ball, right? He likes to make stuff happen late in the play. So I don't know. From a run scheme, I'm sure it'll look different. Maybe it'll be more inside gap than outside. I could see that. The RPOs are different. I guess I'm not ready to say that it'll be significantly different, but that's something we should pay attention to.
Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can also check out his stuff, brownzone.com. As always, Scott, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Petrak, again, make sure you check him out. Really great Brown stuff, brownzone.com on the internet. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Tim Bielek from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Chris Sims, a former NFL quarterback, on a player that needs to break through this season. This from NBC Sports Pro Football Talk.
Well, this is easy. Like, ding, 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 we got a winner, okay? His name is Deshaun Watson. That's right, Deshaun Watson. He is got the greatest contract in the history of football. And he's played, 15, 16 games so far? And this is going into year 3 of the contract. So, yeah, this is a big year. And then we saw last year, it looks like it's getting better. Oh, he's banged up. Oh, it looks like it might get better. So we've yet to see him play 2 or 3 games of high-quality football. And then, of course, we saw Joe Flacco come in and play some high-quality football and go to the playoffs and then be dangerous. And, yeah, that's part of the reason that you talked about earlier. They got rid of Joe Flacco. But to me, it's a big year. It's a big year for the Browns and Watson and all of it, because if it doesn't look right and it doesn't go well, man, the contract's going to look like one of the dumber contracts in the history of football.
With that, let's welcome in Tim Bielek from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, again, I preface this by saying Chris Sims is a guy that before last year thought Watson was going to have a huge season. What he says is fair to a point. Joe Flacco played well. Just remember, if Joe Flacco turned the ball over a lot, you can't continue to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much about the way Joe Flacco played at the end of last season, and I think we all have to understand, obviously it was successful. Obviously it helped get the Browns in the playoffs, but like you said, there were a lot of negative plays. From an analytics perspective, it felt unsustainable, and you kind of saw that bear itself out in the wildcard game when he had those 2 pick sixes that really put the game away in Houston's favor. So, yeah, Joe Flacco did a lot of things, but, it's hard to disagree with what Chris Sims said about Deshaun Watson. But the bottom line is, I've said it all off season, probably going to say it again, throughout the season. He's got to stay on the field. He's got to find a way to protect himself better, because if he's out there, for 5, 6, 7 games in a row, you have to imagine he's just got so much natural talent that I can't imagine just left after, hardly having played, a grand total of 11 games. 11 and a quarter games, I should say, over the previous 3 seasons. You still don't lose talent. You still have that. Maybe it takes time to get up to speed. You saw some of that at the beginning of last season. But, you also saw flashes. You saw plenty of what he still is. The Titans game, the Cardinals game, the second half of the Ravens game. Obviously, that's still there. The biggest thing is, again, he's got to stay healthy. He simply has to, if he's going to, prove that what the Browns paid as far as assets, what they paid as far as, that contract. If he's out there and he stays out there consistently, I think he'll perform to the level that I think a lot of people expected. Maybe it's not top 5 quarterback, maybe it's 6th or 7th. And for this team, I think that's plenty good enough.
Yeah, he did not play 4 games consecutively. So, and at quarterback, 11 guys, you're trying to play in rhythm. So those are the things you want to see. Let's get him some sustained play in the offense and see what it looks like. This is from DraftKings via U Stadium tweeting this out. This is odds for the comeback player of the year. Aaron Rodgers, the favorite, plus 100. Burrow, plus 200. Kirk Cousins, plus 500. Russell Wilson, plus 1,200. Deshaun Watson, plus 1,500. Nick Chubb, plus 1,800. A lot of that is a function of Rodgers is playing with the Jets. Burrow has gone to AFC Championship game. So I get it. If Deshaun Watson plays at a top 5, top 10 caliber quarterback, Browns are serious contenders for the Super, maybe even the favorites. If he's top 5, between that 5 and 10 range, they're going to win a lot of football games, even with the schedule they have.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the schedule, yeah, it's arguably the toughest in the NFL, but the biggest thing about it is almost all those tough games, with the exception of the division games, of course, and the Eagles game, all of those are in Cleveland. The Cowboys are coming to Cleveland. The Chiefs are coming to Cleveland. The Dolphins are coming to Cleveland in late December in prime time, mind you. So that's a tremendous advantage for the Browns. But yeah, when you look at Deshaun Watson and, what the Browns did last year with him playing only about 5 full games and, a quarter of another, they still went 11-6 in spite of just inconsistent quarterback play, just not getting good enough play out of the position consistently, because they had to start 5 different guys throughout the year. So you would imagine if Deshaun Watson plays a consistent amount of games based on what we saw at, like I said, the Titans, Cardinals, second half of the Ravens game, you could certainly easily get to 11, if not 12, in which is certainly a very difficult AFC North. But, looking at those odds, I'm not big on Aaron Rodgers as the favorite. I mean, he's got a torn Achilles. He's already 40 years old. And mind you, also, he's coming off the lowest quarterback rating season of his career as a starting quarterback way back in 2022, all the way down at about a 91.1. That's the lowest of his career. And then coming off a torn Achilles, which we know for most guys is typically a 2-year injury, 1 year to recover, and then 1 year to get back up to full speed. I would not be betting Aaron Rodgers on this. I'd honestly be betting on Joe Burrow for this if I was a betting person.
All right. I know you wrote an article. These are 3 standout rookies from 2023. So second-year players that the Browns will face for the first time in 2024. Devon Achane, the running back for the Dolphins. Jalen Carter, defensive tackle for the Eagles. And I'm not even going to say this. It's Tulapulu, 2 Chargers defensive end. So take us through those and the kind of the way you looked at those.
Well, if you remember from a year ago, I was a big Devon Achane fan, coming out of Texas A&M, and he kind of proved me right with this spectacular season. He had 800 yards, 8 touchdowns, only 103 carries. So the Dolphins really kind of used him in a tandem where I thought it would work best, and he really fit that Mike McDaniel's offense to a T and just brings a lot of speed. And with what Miami has on offense, arguably the fastest offense in all of football, that's going to be a tough challenge because he's just another guy that, Mike McDaniel can put out there and really deploy in a whole bunch of different ways. The advantage for the Browns, like I said, with the last bit about, comeback player of the year, the Browns are lucky that the Dolphins are coming into Cleveland at the end of December in prime time, where you can negate some of that speed advantage that the Dolphins can use their advantage, because it's not going to be a fast track if it's, your typical December weather in Cleveland. Then go into number 2, Jalen Carter. He was a guy that I think, I talked about a year ago, had, from pure talent, was arguably the best player in the draft. And from a position where you typically don't see instant impact, 6 sacks last season as a rookie, 5th most among rookies, as it showed in the graphic there. PFF really loved his rookie season. I would imagine he's much better in year 2. And then the third guy is kind of a more rotational guy, but another guy I liked a little bit, Tuli Pelotu from the Chargers. I really do think the Chargers are going to be much better this year because of the massive upgrade of head coach from Brandon Staley to Jim Harbaugh. I think that alone is going to be a massive improvement. Now, Tuli Pelotu is kind of a guy who's going to be in a rotation, with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, but still solid rookie season last year, 4.5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, second on the team in TFLs behind Khalil Mack's 21. He's a guy that's going to be one play away at any time. And with, Bosa and Mack getting older, Tuli Pelotu certainly can slide in there as a younger, cheaper option for the Chargers and potentially a guy that you have to worry about in the future. But with the Chargers, now that you have they have 2 great veteran pass rushers and a solid up-and-comer in Tuli Pelotu.
All right, before we go to break, this is from Bleacher Report, predicting Browns breakout players at OTAs and minicamp. They go Jameis Winston was inked to be Watson's backup for the 2024 season, at least for OTAs and minicamp, will be the top signal caller. Watson could return sooner. Browns will try not to rush him. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR, must find a way to beat out Huntley for the number 3 quarterback role to stay on the Browns roster. If that doesn't happen, needs to at least impress enough so that he is the recommended to another team with a quarterback need. Thompson-Robinson has a banged-up hip. That's important to note as well. Zach Zinter does not have a starting role lined up because the Browns' O-line depth, but if he has a strong summer, can provide some stability behind those players. Impressive set of practices would allow Zinter to put trust back in his body, journey to being 100% strong after a major broken leg. Tim, when you talk about guys breaking out at OTAs and minicamp, it usually involves curfew and what time that is. Because, again, Winston, we're not going to see a lot. They're allowed on the field for an hour and a half. It's not a lot. Zinter, I think, is legit, though. You want to make sure he's okay moving around. Same thing, DTR is injured. Jameis Winston, he's a former first-round pick. He's going to look good at OTAs.
Yeah, I mean, Jameis knows what he's doing. I think, especially, early on in New Orleans, Jameis showed he still has plenty of ability. I think he's still a solid quarterback. I think he's certainly a high-level backup who's capable of starting in certain situations. And we saw what Kevin Stefanski got out of the backups last season, P.J. Walker, DTR, Joe Flacco. He historically, especially last season, has gotten plenty out of his backup quarterback. So you got to imagine Jameis Winston, arguably the most talented of those backups that he's gotten to work with. So if Deshaun Watson, needs more time from the shoulder surgery to get back to his, normal form, at least you have a solid, experienced veteran there kind of waiting in the wings. With Zach Zinter, I think, like you said, it's pretty much just him getting confident in, moving again, being strong again. Obviously, it was a broken leg, is a very serious injury, but no other, structural damage outside of the broken leg, which is a good sign. Obviously, just bones got to heal, and then he should be good to go. And certainly a guy that you want to make sure that he can be ready to go in 2025. So this is kind of a good chance for him to really be kind of making sure he's paying attention to Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller and everything they do, because when you have 2 starters at that level who have performed at a consistent level for the last handful of seasons, if I'm a rookie, I'm looking at every single thing they do and trying to mimic it as best I can.
Tim Bailey from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, best rookies the Browns will face this year. That's straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim has also written an article, Best Rookies the Browns will face in 2024. They have Jaden Daniels, quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Washington folks tweeting out that they got a dude at quarterback, so it'll be interesting to see him. Malik Neighbors, wide receiver from LSU for the New York Giants. Will he be the next in the long line of great LSU wide receivers? And Xavier Worthy, speedster from Texas, who is playing for the Chiefs. Interesting to see what he and Patrick Mahomes will do. Take us through those, Tim.
Well, Jane Daniels, obviously, the number 2 pick. The Browns are going to get to see him pretty early when they go up to D.C. later this season. Daniels, Heisman Trophy winner this past season. As far as a pure skill set goes, maybe not a ceiling, but just from a pure skill standpoint, he has similar traits to Lamar Jackson, maybe a better passer than Lamar was, although he may not be a special runner. It's going to ask a lot for him to be as good as Lamar Jackson because, of course, Lamar Jackson's a 2-time MVP. Arguably, you could make a strong case for him being the second best quarterback in the NFL right now behind Patrick Mahomes and be a very strong case. If Daniels gets close to that, he's going to be exciting. And he's got plenty of skill players to work with. Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson Jr., and he's got a very good defense to take a little pressure off him. Going to number 2 on the list, Malik Neighbors. Browns are going to get a pretty good look at him in week 3 when the Giants come to Cleveland. Neighbors certainly had a case to be the number 1 receiver behind Marvin instead of Marvin Harrison Jr. went to the Cardinals because Neighbors really has the tools to win any kind of way. He can beat you with speed. He can beat you with power. He can beat you with route running ability. He's really a true 3-level receiver, and it gives Daniel Jones and the Giants a difference maker on offense, which is especially important considering they lost Saquon Barkley in free agency. So Malik Neighbors he's now quickly becomes the number 1 guy in this Giants offense. Will be interesting to see how it does. And number 3, I could have gone with a lot of different directions. I could have gone with Brock Bowers because I think he's really good. I think he's undervalued because of his position. Lad McConkey certainly intrigues me a lot, but I went with Worthy because it just felt like the fit that made the most sense. I know we kind of joked for about 2 months as soon as Xavier Worthy, set the 40-yard dash record at the NFL Combine that everybody's thinking, oh, he's going to be perfect Patrick Mahomes. Well, guess where he goes? Kansas State trades up with the Bills of all teams to get Xavier Worthy, and with a guy in the NFL who's got arguably the best, maybe the best arm we've ever seen in pro football. You get a guy with 4.21 40 speed who's not just a deep ball threat, but he can make plays underneath. They lost that ability in a lot of ways with Tyreek Hill, and Worthy may not be as good as Tyreek Hill, probably won't be, but if he can at least replace that speed dimension that they lost when they traded away Tyreek Hill, it can certainly be a great fit and one the Browns will have to be wary of.
All right, before I let you go, AFC team record predictions. This from Sports Illustrated. For the Browns, they say 9-8. They have the wins: Bengals at home, Steelers at home, Chargers at home, Giants at home, Dolphins, Cowboys at home. They have road wins at the Broncos, at the Commanders, and at the Saints. Losses, they have them losing to the Ravens and Chiefs at home. They have them losing away at the Bengals and Ravens and Steelers. They have them losing on the road to the Raiders, and in Philadelphia and in Jacksonville. Browns will be fighting for a playoff spot. A few games to keep a close eye on that could sway things. Road games with the Saints and Jaguars could be the keys, specifically Jacksonville. I would say road games against the Raiders. I don't know about that one. Losing 2 to the Ravens. I don't know about that either. It seems like the AFC North seems to split. But again, they have at 2-4 in the North. I said 2-4, 3-3, 4-2. I couldn't argue with any of those.
Yeah, they all make sense. And I think, obviously, the Browns beat all 3 of their AFC North teams this year. They've, obviously, with Kevin Stefanski in charge, they've been far better against the AFC North than they've been in previous years. And looking at the teams that specifically mentioned, obviously, at Pittsburgh, that's been a bugaboo of this franchise, really basically never winning at Acrisure, I think only twice in their entire history, including that wild card game in 2020, were they able to do that. The only reason I will argue why I can understand at Raiders is because the NFL's weird. I mean, every team will have a game or two that they're not supposed to lose, but they end up losing. It's just part of the natural cycle of football. They're going to have wins they probably don't deserve to have because they don't play as well as they should, but they just do enough to get the win. And then games where, they look like they should be a heavy favorite to win, but then they don't. It's just the weird nature of pro football. But yeah, looking at the schedule, I still think if you're a Browns fan, you should at least think 10-7, 11-6 are decent possibilities. Certainly if Deshaun Watson plays like a top 10, even top 5 quarterback, you could be looking 12-5, maybe even 13-4. Certainly it's going to hinge on Watson being what he is, because you would imagine there would still be a little bit of regression from the defense just because they're going up against better quarterbacks, and it's hard to sustain elite level defensive play year in and year out in this NFL.
Tim Bielik, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
You do as well. Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out, Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Before we go, some Guardians news. Guardians are promoting outfielder Jonathan Rodriguez from AAA Columbus. They are designating Ramon Laureano for assignment. Zach Mizell tweets that out. Now, Rodriguez is not in the lineup tonight at AAA. He hit .276, 6 doubles, 7 homers, 28 RBIs, 4 stolen bases in 185 plate appearances. Columbus this season, that's 43 games. Struck out 47 times, drew 29 walks. Ramon Laureano was hitting .143, 1 homer, 4 RBIs, 32 strikeouts, 83 plate appearances in 31 games. Rodriguez, a young guy with some home run pops, 7 home runs and 28 RBIs. Again, not in the lineup tonight as the Guardians getting ready to play the Mets, but I'm sure we will see him at home sometime over at Progressive Field sometime in this series against the Mets. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.